Hello, my name is Jonathan. Welcome to my channel, The Little Things Junkie. A few videos ago I did a sort of inbox review of this little thing here, the ICM field kitchen and crew, and I was rather taken in particular with one of the figures and the kitchen itself, and I've been sort of thinking, oh, we need to get that built and painted. So that's what I've been doing recently, and here's the video about it. So let's get into it. Not much inside the box as you'd expect from such a small kit. The parts are superbly moulded, great detail. The construction is very straightforward. It's just basically a box-shaped kit. Nevertheless, the fitting is immaculate. There's not a gap anywhere, no filling needed anywhere. Everything lines up true and straight. It's a flawless, simple build. There is an option to show the cooking vessel with the lid open. I chose to have my lid shut there in the top right of the picture there, but you have the option to put the cooking vessel in there and fill it with food if you wish, and again it just slots perfectly into place. As you can see, I'm using Tamiya extra thin throughout the build on this project, and a few little pieces to finish off the top side, a few doorways and little lids to the compartments in the kitchen. The underside is pretty simple too, just a beam axle and a couple of leaf springs, another couple of other little details, all very good. There is the only part I needed to put filler into it. The two halves don't meet flawlessly, and I did have to put a smear of filler on that. I'm using Mission Models Panzer Grey for this, no reason other than I have a bottle of it and I may as well use it up. Maybe not my favourite kind of paint, but it's fine for what I needed it for here. So the whole of the kitchen gets a coating of Panzer Grey. And then I've added to the Panzer Grey some Elfenbein, the interior cream colour, again for Mission Models, just to lighten up the paint. And I'm just spraying it on a few of the upper surfaces just to give some sort of definition and distinction, just to break up the monotonous colour. There aren't many decals in this kit, but the ones that are there are very high quality. Little to no carrier film, they settle down perfectly. They're sharp and in register. No, it's only black and white, I accept, but nevertheless they are very good, and I didn't need to use any setting agents. Next I mixed some oil paint, burnt umber and black, to a kind of a sepia colour, and I did a pin wash over the whole of the kitchen and quickly wiped off the excess with a bud. Incidentally, this bud I'm using it's not a cotton bud. It's I don't know what it's made of, but it doesn't shed lint like a cotton bud does, and it's used for cleaning electronics or something. You'll see they're also making a point of colouring the stark white of the decals with a little bit of that same oil paint. These placards just looked a little bit too bright and stark. And here I'm starting the first dry brush of using oil paints, just a kind of a medium grey colour, and I went over the entire kit with that. And that's how it looks after the first round of dry brushing and pin wash. And here's another round of dry brushing with a much lighter grey. So I only applied it on the most extreme areas, the most pointy areas of the kit, if you like. Just doing a very light dry brushing over the highest of the points. And here I'm using the same colour as that second dry brush, just to pick out the sort of details, so the bolts and nuts and other fine details. I like to have an amount of contrast on the kits I make. I try not to be too excessive, but I do think a little bit of contrast helps. Just sort of bring those small details to the attention of the viewer. And here I'm adding just a modicum of wear and tear, I guess commonly referred to as chipping, but I'm trying to achieve an effect more like the paint has worn through to bare metal rather than chipped through. And I'm using a dark brown thinned oil paint to do this. The final bit of painting for this is to blacken the inside of the chimney, using just regular black paint for this. And I also sprayed very thin black paint around the top of the outside of the chimney, just to depict a bit of sooting there. And with that, that's the kitchen itself painted. And here's a little chef. These constituent parts. There is quite a prominent seam line along the figure, but it is dead easy to clean off with a blade. There's no mould misalignment. So I assembled the figure and I primed it in grey Steinor res. The precise colour mixes of what I use aren't necessarily important. All that matters is that a colour approximating what you see on screen now is painted as the base coat for the face. You'll also notice that I painted on this figure the eyeballs in white first, or off white, a very pale flesh colour actually. It wasn't actually necessary on this figure. The eyes are quite sort of puffy and closed, and the eyeball, the whites of the eyes are not really seen on the figure. However, if you want to use this on a figure with eyes that are wider and maybe slightly more defined, it's a good way of getting the detail of the eyes in first without slopping it onto the flesh. So you paint the eye first, both the whites and the pupil, and then you cut into it with flesh colour. And the flesh colour I'm using here is I'm using Citadel paint for this part of the face, and I used an approximate 50-50 mix of Bugman's Glow and Cadian Flesh Tone. I've applied it in several very thin layers, as you can see. This ensures that I won't get any brush marks on the face, which really does need to be smooth. So I paint a homogeneous base tone, and then I can get on to lightening it in places. And for that I use Cadian Flesh Tone on its own, thinned quite heavily and applied as a glaze, concentrating on the higher parts of the face, so the brows, the cheekbones, the bridge of the nose, point of the chin, and around the tops of the ears. And it's just a process of glazing slowly, methodically over these areas until the required tone is reached. The paint is very, very thin, and I'm applying, as you can see, only very tiny amounts of it. Next up, I use Vallejo Model Colour Basic Skin Tone, and again I'm using thin glazes over the same places that I applied the previous highlight, but just in smaller areas. So rather than doing the whole brow, I'll just paint the points of the brow, rather than doing the whole of the bridge of the nose, just the centre part of it and the bulbous part at the end, and so on. And doing it this way, you get a good graduation, a nice soft blend of colours, until you've reached something that looks like this. And here I'm adding the hair. He's going to be a grey-haired chap, so I'm using a dark grey base for the hair, for the eyebrows, for the moustache. I find it helps to have these elements defined, so that I can then see where I need shade and more highlight applied. It just gives me a greater sense of the whole face. So using a red added to the basic skin tone with a touch of black, I mix the colour for the shading. And again, with very thin glazes, I applied that to the appropriate places of the face. Using thin glazes like this means that I don't need to mix more shade colours. A thin glaze of this colour over the existing flesh tone will give one level of shade, and then the more glazes you put over it, you can deepen, darken the colour. So you don't need to mix up shade after shade after shade. Just one will do. Apply it over itself, it will darken until you reach the effect you require. I based the hat in something called Karak stone, again a Citadel paint. You may think this is far too brown for a white chef's hat, but the subsequent glazing of lighter paints over the top bring it up to the right colour. Now once the whole hat has been painted, other than the deepest shadows, I take a glaze of the same paint, again very thin glaze, and place that over the dark shadows so that it ties the darkest shadows in with the base colour. I use Citadel Flayed One Flesh to lighten the base colour and started highlighting, and then again use a thin glaze to blend that and the previous colour together. Next up is flayed one flesh mixed approximately 50-50 with white, and the same process all over again, painting in slightly smaller areas all over the hat and then going over with a very thin glaze to blend the colours together. And I used a final glaze of pure white just to bring up the highest highlights. I made a blue using Vallejo model colour field blue and black, and base coated the shirt, and then added to that pale grey blue also from Vallejo. So what you see here is the base coat down, and with the pale grey blue added to that base mixture, I'm starting to highlight the shirt. Now you see again, it's very thin glazes, and what I'm aiming to do is have the brush kind of basically leave a snail trail behind itself. The paint is so thin and you put so little paint on the figure that it dries almost immediately. I'm also drawing the brush towards where I want the most of the paint deposited. So as you lift the brush from a figure, it will always leave a little bit behind, a little sort of an accumulation of paint behind. And so I'm always moving the brush in the direction where I want that higher accumulation to be. So for instance, from up towards the top of the shoulder there, so the top of the shoulder is brighter than the front of the chest. And I'm just going over and over and over the same parts, very, very slowly, again, very methodically, very thin glazes to build up the contrast. And you can see there that his left-hand side, his collar and the front of his shirt and his shoulder are far lighter than his right-hand side. And that's just to demonstrate how it should appear. And at this stage, I've gone over the whole of the shirt in the same way. And I've added more pale grey blue to the mix to bring up the higher highlights. Again, glazing, very thin glazes. Now, I painted the trousers off camera, but painted them exactly the same way, using German grey, using field grey, I believe it is, from Vallejo model colour. For the boots, I mixed up a dark black from Citadel Rhinox hide and Vallejo black, and painted thin coats of that over both boots. I then mixed a flesh colour into that same base colour, and using thin glazes, I highlighted the boots. Adding more flesh into the mix, I made a colour for the extreme highlights. Using Citadel World Terrors Red and XV88, which is basically a deep red and a tan colour, I mixed up a dark leather colour to depict wear around the toes and other high wear areas of the boot. And using Talon Sand, literally a sand colour, again from Citadel, I did very, very small thin glazes over the boot to depict the centre of those wear patterns. And that's how he's looking after that. Just the apron to go. Now, I intended to show painting the apron, but when I reviewed the footage, there was something weird about the white balance of the footage, and I just couldn't get it looking right. So, regrettably, I've had to leave that out. It was done in pretty much the same process as the hat, only I started with a different kind of mucky off grey colour to differentiate between the hat and the apron. But I painted it using exactly the same process as the hat. I just lightened each successive coat until in the end I was able to glaze with almost pure white just to tie everything together, and then add a few pure white highlights here and there. And the final little thing for this fellow was to mucky up his apron a bit. Let's put a few blood stains and food stains over the front of his apron. Well, there it is, all finished. I must say I'm very pleased I got this out of the box and assembled it and painted this figure. It's been a lot of fun making this little project, and I'm pleased with the way it's turned out. Please do let me know what you think of the project. Leave your comments below. Any positives, any constructive negatives, they'll be fine for me to hear. I don't mind that. Got broad shoulders. And also please let me know if you'd like to see more figure painting on the channel, or if you think I should stick to AFVs or planes or field kitchens or whatever it is, let me know. Thanks for watching. Please do enjoy your hobby as I intend to enjoy mine. I'll see you again soon. Bye.